Hey guys, tonight we begin with Call of Abraham, Genesis 12. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey. In the ancient land of Mesopotamia, where the Euphrates River flows gently through fertile valleys, we find ourselves in the bustling city of Ur. The sun sets slowly over mud brick houses, casting long shadows across narrow streets where merchants have closed their stalls for the day. The air carries the scent of barley and dates from the marketplace, mixed with the sweet smoke of evening cooking fires. Here lives a man named Abram, together with his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot. Abram tends his flocks and follows the customs of his father Terah, dwelling among people who worship many gods. The ziggurats rise like ancient mountains against the evening sky, their terraced levels reaching toward the heavens where countless stars begin to twinkle. But tonight, something sacred stirs in the quiet hours. As Abram rests beneath the vast canopy of stars, a divine voice whispers through the gentle desert breeze. It's not a voice of thunder or storm, but something tender and profound, calling him toward a destiny he cannot yet imagine. The voice speaks of leaving, of journeying, of promises that will unfold like flowers in an eternal spring. This is how our story begins, in the stillness between one breath and the next, where the Almighty reaches across time to touch one faithful heart. The cool evening air carries the scent of jasmine as Abraham steps outside his tent, drawn by something he cannot name. Above him, the vast canopy of stars spreads across the desert sky like scattered diamonds on dark velvet. Each point of light seems to pulse with quiet purpose, as if the heavens themselves are preparing to speak. Sarah remains inside, her gentle breathing a reminder of the peaceful life they have built together. Yet Abraham feels a stirring in his spirit, a sense that this night will be different from all others. The silence around him is not empty, but full of anticipation. The Lord's voice comes not as thunder, but as a whisper that fills his entire being. Look now toward heaven, and count the stars if you are able to number them. Abraham lifts his eyes higher, watching as more stars emerge in the deepening darkness. They seem countless, stretching beyond the horizon in every direction. So shall your descendants be, the voice continues, and Abraham feels the weight and wonder of this promise settling into his heart like warm honey. Though he and Sarah have no children, though the years have passed like flowing water, this divine word carries a certainty that transcends all earthly understanding. He stands there for a long time, simply gazing upward, letting the promise take root in his soul. Each star becomes a symbol of hope, each glimmer a reminder that the God who created all things is faithful to his word. The desert wind stirs gently around him, carrying with it the fragrance of distant rain and the whisper of possibilities yet to unfold. When Abraham finally returns to his tent, his steps carry a new lightness. The promise has been given, sealed not with parchment and ink, but with the very stars themselves as witnesses. Tonight he will sleep deeply, cradled in the certainty that the God of all creation has spoken, and his word will surely come to pass. The morning sun casts long shadows across the courtyard, as Abraham begins the careful work of organizing his household for departure. Servants move quietly between the tents, folding woolen blankets and packing clay vessels into leather satchels. The familiar sounds of daily life in Haran continue around them, but for Abraham's family, everything has changed. Sarah watches from the doorway of their tent as her husband speaks softly with his nephew Lot. The young man's eyes are bright with anticipation, his hands gesturing as they discuss the journey ahead. She finds comfort in seeing how readily Lot has embraced this calling, how willingly he has chosen to leave everything he has known. The livestock must be gathered and counted. Sheep bleat softly as they're guided into traveling formation, their woolly bodies pressing close together in the cool morning air. Goats follow behind, their bells creating a gentle chorus that will accompany the family for many days to come. The camels, patient and sure-footed, wait with their loads carefully balanced across their humped backs. Abraham's servants work with practiced efficiency, their movements unhurried but purposeful. These men and women have chosen to follow their master into the unknown, trusting in his wisdom and in the promise he has shared with them. Their faces show neither fear nor reluctance, only quiet determination. The sun climbs higher, warming the earth beneath their feet. Children from neighboring households gather to watch the preparations, their curious eyes taking in every detail of this remarkable departure. Some of the older residents of Haran shake their heads in wonder, unable to understand why anyone would leave such a prosperous and established place. But Abraham's heart remains fixed on the voice he heard, on the promise of blessing that awaits somewhere beyond the horizon. Each bundled possession, each organized animal, each careful preparation brings him closer to stepping out in faith toward that distant land. The morning sun filters through the goat-hair tent where Abram sits quietly, his weathered hands folded in contemplation. The camp around him stirs with the gentle sounds of daily life. The scent of baking bread mingles with the desert air. Something has changed in Abram's heart overnight. The voice that spoke to him burns like a steady flame within his chest, neither dimming nor overwhelming, but constant and sure. He rises slowly, his joints protesting slightly, and walks to the edge of their encampment where the vast wilderness stretches endlessly before them. The servants tend to their tasks with quiet efficiency. Camels shift and grumble softly as they're loaded with water skins and provisions. The atmosphere carries a sense of purpose, though tinged with uncertainty. Where exactly are they going? Eliezer, Abram's most trusted servant, approaches with respectful concern. His master's decision to leave everything familiar weighs on all their minds, yet something in Abram's demeanor speaks of unshakable conviction. There's a peace in his eyes that wasn't there before, a quiet confidence that steadies everyone around him. Lot, Abram's nephew, secures the last of his possessions onto a pack animal. The young man's wife watches the horizon with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Adventure calls to them, but leaving behind the familiar wells and pastures of their homeland requires courage. As the caravan slowly forms, Abram takes one final look at the place they've called home. The decision is made. The journey toward promise begins with a single step into the unknown, guided by faith in a voice that has spoken directly to his heart. The evening breeze carries stories across the ancient landscape as Abraham and his household settle into their rhythm of desert travel. The sun has begun its gentle descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of amber and rose. Sarah walks beside one of the camels, her hand resting lightly on its warm flank, finding comfort in the steady rhythm of its steps against the sandy ground. Waterskins slosh quietly with each step, and the soft tinkling of bronze vessels creates a gentle melody that mingles with the whisper of wind through scattered acacia trees. Children's voices drift from somewhere within the traveling party, their laughter carrying on the desert air like music. Abraham's eyes scan the horizon, not with worry, but with the quiet confidence of one who walks in divine promise. The land spreads before them in rolling hills and valleys, dotted with olive groves and patches of green where springs bubble up from hidden sources. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd's flute plays a haunting melody, its notes rising and falling with the evening breeze. The livestock move contentedly along the worn paths, their bells creating a soft percussion that mingles with the gentle sounds of travel. Donkeys laden with household goods plod steadily forward, their burdens carefully balanced and secured with weathered rope. The smell of dust and sage fills the air, along with the faint aroma of bread baking over small fires that will soon mark their evening camp. Sarah's maidservants walk nearby, their voices low and companionable as they share the small observations of the day. A hawk circles overhead, riding the warm currents with effortless grace. The desert begins to reveal its subtle beauty in the softer light, showing hidden colors in stone and sand that emerge only when the harsh brightness of midday fades. As the caravan continues its unhurried progress, there is a sense of being part of something greater than themselves, participants in a story that stretches beyond the visible horizon into the realm of divine purpose and ancient promise. Sarah moves quietly through the tent as the first light of dawn filters through the woven goat hair. Her movements are deliberate, graceful, born from years of managing a household that has grown beyond anything she could have imagined in their early days in Ur. The servants are already stirring, preparing for another day of travel, but Sarah takes these precious moments before the camp fully awakens to center herself. She folds the sleeping mats with practiced hands, her fingers tracing the familiar patterns woven into the fabric. These simple tasks ground her, connecting her to the rhythms of daily life, even as their journey carries them further from everything she once knew. The morning air carries the scent of cooking fires and the gentle sounds of livestock beginning to stir. Through the tent opening, she watches Abraham speaking quietly with Lot near the assembled herds. Their voices are low, respectful of the early hour, discussing the day's route and the condition of the animals. Sarah has learned to read the subtle signs in Abraham's posture, the way he holds himself when he's listening for that voice that has become so central to their lives. She thinks of the promises spoken to her husband, words that have shaped their path for months now. A great nation, countless descendants, blessings that would flow through their family to touch distant generations. The weight of these promises settles around her like a familiar garment, both comforting and awesome in its implications. Sarah's hands pause in their work as she considers the transformation in Abraham since that first calling. The man who once seemed content with the established rhythms of city life now moves with the quiet confidence of one who has learned to trust in unseen guidance. She sees it in the way he studies the horizon, not with anxiety but with anticipation. The camp begins to stir more fully now, voices joining the morning chorus. Sarah completes her preparations, her heart steady with the quiet resolve that has carried her through each day of this remarkable journey. Whatever lies ahead, she will meet it with the same grace that has sustained her thus far. The morning sun rises gently over the ancient landscape as Abraham takes his first deliberate steps away from everything he has ever known. His sandaled feet press into the warm earth, each footfall marking a moment of profound trust. The sound is soft, rhythmic, almost like a prayer being whispered through motion. Sarah walks beside him, her presence steady and reassuring. The fabric of her traveling robes moves gracefully with each step, catching the golden light that filters through the awakening sky. Her hand occasionally brushes against Abraham's arm, a gentle reminder that they share this journey together, bound by faith and love. Behind them, the servants tend to the small caravan with quiet efficiency. The camels move at their own unhurried pace, their soft snuffling and the gentle tinkling of their bells creating a peaceful soundtrack for this momentous departure. Waterskins sway gently at their sides, and provisions are secured with care for the long journey ahead. The landscape stretches endlessly before them, rolling hills covered in sparse vegetation, giving way to distant horizons that seem to shimmer with possibility. Abraham's eyes scan the path ahead, not with anxiety but with a quiet confidence that comes from following a divine calling. Each landmark they pass becomes part of their story, each stone and tree a witness to their obedience. As they walk, Abraham reflects on the voice he heard, the promise that echoes in his heart like a gentle song. He will become the father of a great nation, his descendants as numerous as the stars above. The thought fills him with wonder rather than burden, and his steps remain steady and sure. The rhythm of their journey becomes meditative, a gentle progression through time and space that feels both earthly and eternal. They are pilgrims now, following a path that God Himself has prepared, trusting in promises that stretch far beyond their mortal understanding into the very fabric of eternity. The morning sun rises gently over the rolling hills of Canaan, casting long shadows across valleys dotted with ancient olive groves and fig trees. Abraham stands at the crest of a hill, his weathered hands resting on his walking staff, gazing out over the land that stretches endlessly before him. The air is warm and carries the sweet scent of wild herbs and distant cedar forests. This is the land of promise, flowing with milk and honey, where streams wind through fertile valleys and shepherds lead their flocks to green pastures. Sarah walks beside him, her eyes reflecting wonder as she takes in the beauty of this new homeland. The servants and herders spread out across the hillside, their voices soft and reverent as they whisper about the richness of the soil beneath their feet. Abraham feels the weight of divine presence in this moment, remembering the words spoken to him about this very land becoming an inheritance for generations yet unborn. He kneels slowly, gathering a handful of the dark earth, letting it slip through his fingers like a blessing. The ground here seems sacred, touched by something eternal and unchanging. In the distance, ancient cities rise from the plains, their stone walls catching the golden light of afternoon. Smoke from cooking fires drifts lazily upward, and the sound of temple bells echoes faintly across the valleys. This is a land of many peoples, each with their own customs and ways. Yet Abraham senses that here, in this place, something new and wonderful will take root. The evening approaches with gentle colors painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Abraham builds a simple altar with stones gathered from the hillside, offering prayers of gratitude for safe passage and for the promise of this good land. The stars begin to appear one by one, each light a reminder of the covenant spoken under similar skies in distant Mesopotamia. As night settles over Canaan, campfires dot the landscape like earthbound stars, and the sound of quiet conversations mingles with the gentle lowing of cattle and the soft bleating of sheep. This is home now, this promised land where dreams take root in fertile soil and grow toward an unimaginable future. The gentle hills of Canaan roll endlessly beneath the soft morning light as Abraham's caravan moves deeper into this promised land. The dust settles quietly behind them, and the steady rhythm of footsteps creates a peaceful cadence that seems to match the beating of faithful hearts. Shechem appears before them like a vision from a dream, nestled between Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. The ancient city rests in the valley, its stone walls weathered by countless seasons, its gates worn smooth by the passage of many peoples. Here, among the sacred terebinth trees, Abraham feels the weight of divine presence settling upon his shoulders like a warm cloak. The Canaanites move about their daily tasks, their voices carrying softly on the evening breeze. They watch this stranger and his household with curious eyes, perhaps sensing something different about this man who carries himself with quiet dignity and purpose. Abraham searches for the perfect place, guided by an inner voice that speaks without words. Beneath the spreading branches of an ancient oak, Abraham begins to gather stones. Each one chosen carefully, placed with reverence, building something that will stand as a testament to this moment. His hands work slowly, methodically, creating an altar that will mark this sacred encounter between heaven and earth. The Lord appears to Abraham here, speaking words that will echo through generations. To your offspring I will give this land. The promise hangs in the air like incense, filling the space between the mountains with hope and certainty. Abraham's heart swells with gratitude as he completes his altar, each stone a prayer, each prayer a step deeper into faith. The fire crackles softly as Abraham offers his sacrifice, smoke rising like whispered prayers into the vast Canaanite sky. The altar at Shechem stands complete, a quiet monument to trust, to obedience, to the beautiful mystery of walking with God through an unknown land that somehow feels like home. The morning light filters through the canopy of ancient oak trees as Abraham walks slowly among their massive trunks. These oaks have stood here for countless seasons, their roots deep in the earth of Canaan, their branches reaching toward heaven like prayers made manifest in wood and leaf. The bark is rough and weathered beneath his palm as he traces the patterns carved by time and wind. Here, in this grove near Hebron, Abraham feels the weight of God's promises settling into his bones like morning dew. The oaks seem to whisper of permanence, of roots that go deeper than memory, of branches that will shelter generations yet to come. Their leaves rustle softly in the gentle breeze, creating a natural sanctuary where heaven and earth meet in quiet communion. Abraham kneels among the fallen acorns, each one holding within it the promise of another mighty tree. How like God's covenant these seeds are, small now, but carrying within them the potential for something vast and enduring. He gathers a handful, feeling their smooth weight, imagining the forest that might grow from such humble beginnings. The filtered sunlight creates pools of golden warmth on the forest floor. Abraham closes his eyes and listens to the peaceful sounds around him. The distant call of doves, the whisper of wind through branches, the soft settling of leaves. This is holy ground, not because of ceremony or ritual, but because God has met him here among these patient trees. As the day grows warmer, Abraham finds himself drawn to the largest oak, its trunk so wide that his outstretched arms cannot encompass it. He sits in its shade, leaning against the ancient bark, and feels the deep peace that comes from being exactly where God intends him to be. The tree has weathered storms and seasons, drought and plenty, yet it remains steadfast. In this quiet grove, surrounded by these gentle giants, Abraham makes his vows to the God who called him from Ur. His words are simple, spoken to the rustling leaves and the patient earth, but they carry the weight of forever. The oaks stand witness to his promises, their branches swaying in what seems like benediction. Abraham's footsteps carry him steadily northward, through the hill country, each gentle rise and fall of the terrain bringing him closer to a place that will forever hold sacred meaning. The morning sun filters through scattered clouds, casting soft shadows across the rocky slopes where olive trees grow wild and ancient. Here, near the ruins of an old settlement, Abraham pauses. The locals call this place Luz, though something in his spirit whispers that it will one day bear another name. The ground beneath his feet feels different somehow, charged with a quiet holiness that makes him want to remove his sandals and bow low. Without hesitation, Abraham begins gathering stones from the hillside. Each rock fits perfectly in his weathered hands as he carefully arranges them into an altar. The work is meditative, unhurried, his movements reflecting deep reverence for what he senses is about to unfold. Sarah watches from a respectful distance, her heart understanding the solemnity of this moment. As the final stone finds its place, Abraham lifts his voice in prayer, calling upon the name of the Lord who brought him out of Ur, who promised to make his descendants as numerous as the stars. His words drift across the quiet hills, carried on the gentle breeze that stirs the grass around the altar. The silence that follows feels full rather than empty, pregnant with divine presence. Abraham remains kneeling beside his carefully built altar, his heart open to receive whatever the Lord chooses to reveal. The stones seem to glow softly in the morning light, as if blessed by the prayers offered over them. This place, this moment, will echo through generations. Here at Bethel, the house of God, Abraham has again affirmed his faith through worship, marking another milestone in his journey toward the promises that stretch before him like an endless horizon of hope. The evening air carries the scent of cooking fires and the gentle sounds of a camp settling into rest. Abraham walks slowly through the cluster of tents, his footsteps soft against the packed earth. The day's journey has ended, and his household prepares for another night under the vast canopy of stars. Sarah emerges from their tent, her movements graceful in the flickering light of nearby flames. She carries a clay vessel, still warm from the evening meal, and sets it carefully beside their dwelling. The simple act speaks of countless such evenings, of a rhythm they have learned in their travels through this promised land. Lot's family has pitched their tents nearby, close enough for fellowship, yet allowing space for their own flocks and herds. The young man tends to his animals, ensuring they have sufficient water and fodder for the night. His servants move quietly about their tasks, their voices a soft murmur in the gathering darkness. Abraham lifts his eyes to the heavens, where the first stars begin to appear like scattered diamonds against the deepening blue. Each point of light seems to whisper of the promise spoken to him, of descendants as numerous as these celestial hosts. The camp dogs settle near the dying embers, their presence a comfort against the wilderness sounds. Sarah approaches Abraham, her hand finding his arm with familiar ease. Together they stand in the doorway of their tent, looking out over their temporary home. Tomorrow will bring another day of journeying, another step in the path the Lord has set before them. But tonight there is rest and peace beneath the watching stars. The Negev stretches before Abraham's caravan like an ocean of sand and stone, its vastness both humbling and magnificent. This southern wilderness holds a different kind of beauty than the green valleys they have known. Here, the earth speaks in whispers of wind across weathered rocks and the soft shuffle of sand shifting in gentle breezes. Sarah walks beside her camel, her fingers trailing along the animal's patient flank. The desert has taught her new rhythms, slower and more deliberate than the bustling pace of city life. Each step forward is measured, each breath more conscious in the dry air that carries the scent of sage and distant rain. The sun hangs low in the western sky, painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber. Abraham pauses to survey their path, his weathered hands shielding his eyes as he gazes toward the horizon. The silence here is profound, broken only by the gentle clink of water vessels and the soft murmur of voices among his people. Lot's herds move in quiet procession, their bells creating a peaceful melody that drifts across the desert floor. The animals seem to understand the sacred nature of this place, their movements slow and reverent as they follow the ancient paths carved by countless generations of wanderers. As evening approaches, the desert begins to reveal its hidden life. Small creatures emerge from their daytime shelters, and the first stars appear in the deepening sky. Abraham's camp will rest here tonight, surrounded by the Negev's timeless embrace, where the voice of the Almighty seems to echo in every grain of sand and every breath of wind that stirs the endless expanse. The journey continues, measured not in haste but in faith, each mile a testament to trust in promises yet to be fulfilled. In this wilderness, time moves differently, and the heart learns to find peace in the vast silence that surrounds them. The shadows grow longer as we follow Abraham's caravan into a land both ancient and mysterious. Egypt stretches before them like a dream painted in gold and green, where the great river Nile flows through endless expanses of sand and stone. The air here carries different scents: incense from distant temples, the sweetness of dates ripening in palm groves, and the rich earth of the riverbanks where life flourishes in abundance. Abraham's servants guide their animals along well-worn paths that countless travelers have walked before them. The dust beneath their feet has been trodden by merchants and nomads for generations, each seeking sustenance when their own lands could no longer provide. Here in Egypt, the granaries overflow even when other regions face hardship, and the promise of survival draws the weary from far and wide. Sarah walks beside her husband, her footsteps soft against the packed earth. The weight of their decisions settles around them like evening mist. To survive the famine, they have chosen this path, though it leads them far from the land of promise. Sometimes the journey of faith requires us to travel through unexpected places, to find provision in foreign soil while holding fast to the deeper calling that guides our hearts. The Egyptian landscape unfolds with quiet majesty. Distant pyramids rise like mountains crafted by human hands, their ancient stones holding secrets of dynasties long past. Palm trees sway gently in the warm breeze, their fronds whispering stories of pharaohs and priests, of harvests and festivals, of a civilization that bloomed beside the life-giving river. Abraham's flocks find grazing in the fertile delta, and his household discovers temporary rest in this land of plenty. Though they are strangers here, walking paths that are not their own, they carry with them the invisible blessing that transcends all boundaries. Even in this foreign place, they remain holders of the covenant, bearers of promises that will unfold in their proper season. The gentle sounds of evening settle around them, the lowing of cattle, the soft conversations of servants preparing camp, the distant murmur of the great river that never rests. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new encounters with the customs and rulers of this ancient land. But tonight, in the gathering dusk, there is simply the quiet presence of divine protection watching over these sojourners in their temporary home. Abraham sits quietly beside the well as evening approaches, his weathered hands folded in contemplation. The day's heat begins to lift from the earth, and a gentle breeze carries the scent of wild herbs across the camp. His servants move with practiced efficiency, tending to the flocks and preparing for the night ahead. The patriarch's mind drifts to the lessons learned through years of wandering. Each step of this journey has required a choice between his own understanding and the voice that calls him forward. In Egypt, when famine threatened, he had acted from fear rather than faith. The memory still brings a heaviness to his heart, yet he knows that even his failures have become part of the greater tapestry being woven. Sarah approaches with quiet steps, her presence as familiar as his own breath. She settles beside him without words, understanding that these twilight moments are sacred. Together, they watch the stars begin to emerge, each point of light a reminder of promises spoken under desert skies. The flocks settle into their evening rhythm, the soft bleating of sheep creating a gentle symphony. Abraham remembers the early days when leaving Ur felt impossible, when each mile stretched like an eternity. Now he understands that God's timing unfolds like seasons, each moment perfectly placed within the whole. Trust, he has learned, is not a single decision but a daily choosing. It grows in small acts of obedience, in moments of surrender when his own wisdom falls short. The land around him may still be unfamiliar, but his heart has found its true home in the certainty of God's faithfulness. As darkness deepens, Abraham offers a quiet prayer of gratitude. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to trust. But tonight, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of his household, he rests in the knowledge that he walks a path prepared before time began. The morning light filters softly through the tent walls as Abraham stirs from his rest. The events that have settled into memory, and now his heart turns toward a familiar place, a sacred ground where stones once stood as witnesses to divine encounters. Bethel calls to him, that place where he first built an altar to the Lord in this promised land. The household begins to move with quiet purpose. Servants fold the dark goat-hair tents with practiced hands, their movements unhurried and peaceful. The flocks gather naturally, as if they too sense the pull toward that holy place between Bethel and Ai, where Abraham once pitched his tent and called upon the name of the Lord. Sarah walks beside Abraham as they begin their journey, her steps steady on the familiar path. The sun climbs gently overhead, casting long shadows that shift and dance across the rolling hills. The air carries the scent of wild herbs and the distant promise of green pastures. As they travel, Abraham's thoughts drift to that first altar he built here, the stones carefully chosen and placed with reverence. He remembers the smoke rising toward heaven, the prayers offered in gratitude and wonder. This return feels like coming home to a place where earth and heaven touched, where promises were spoken and received. The landscape opens before them, welcoming and serene. Olive trees dot the hillsides, their silver-green leaves catching the breeze. The ground beneath their feet tells stories of ancient pathways, of other journeys taken in faith and hope. When they reach the place, Abraham stands quietly for a moment, remembering. The stones of his altar remain, weathered by time but still standing. Here, in this peaceful valley, he will once again call upon the name of the Lord, offering thanksgiving for safe passage and continued provision. The evening approaches gently, painting the sky in soft pastels, as Abraham prepares to rebuild what time has touched, to restore this sacred space where his journey of faith continues to unfold. The gentle morning light filters through the camp as Abraham sits quietly beneath the shade of an ancient oak tree. His weathered hands rest upon his knees, and his eyes hold the weight of a decision that has been growing in his heart like a seed in fertile ground. The flocks and herds stretch endlessly across the valley, a sea of wool and hide that speaks of abundant blessing, yet also of a problem that can no longer be ignored. Lot approaches with measured steps, his own face bearing the same thoughtful expression that has marked their conversations in recent days. The two men have spoken many times of this moment, knowing it must come, yet neither eager to see it arrive. The land that once seemed vast enough for both their households now feels crowded, not with animals alone, but with the tension that comes when two growing families must share space, meant for one. Abraham's voice carries the gentleness of dawn when he finally speaks. There is no anger in his words, no bitterness, only the calm wisdom of a man who has learned to trust in provisions beyond his own understanding. The entire expanse of the promised land spreads before them, and Abraham allows his nephew to choose first, to take whichever portion draws his eye. Lot's gaze travels eastward, toward the Jordan Valley where the grass grows thick and green, where the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah glimmer in the distance like jewels. The practical choice seems clear to him, and Abraham watches without protest as his nephew claims the richer land. There is something beautiful in this moment of letting go, this quiet demonstration of faith, that what remains will be enough. The parting unfolds with the solemnity of a blessing, two men who have journeyed far together now preparing to walk separate paths. As Lot gathers his household and begins his journey toward the Jordan plain, Abraham remains standing beside the oak tree, his heart peaceful despite the change, trusting in promises that are greater than any earthly inheritance. The morning light filters softly across the camp as Abraham and Lot prepare to part ways. The tension of recent days has given way to a quiet acceptance, a recognition that their combined herds have grown too large for the land to sustain both households in harmony. Abraham's voice carries gentle authority as he speaks to his nephew, offering him first choice of the territories that stretch before them like an open scroll. Lot's eyes turn eastward, drawn to the verdant expanse of the Jordan Valley. The river winds like a silver ribbon through fields of green, its waters catching the early sunlight and casting dancing reflections across the fertile plains. From this elevated position, the land appears almost garden-like in its abundance, with patches of cultivated ground and natural pastures extending toward the distant settlements of Sodom and Gomorrah. The contrast between the Jordan Valley and the hill country is striking. Where Abraham's chosen territory rolls in gentle waves of limestone and sparse vegetation, Lot's selection spreads in rich, dark soil that promises easy cultivation and abundant grazing. The shepherds point toward streams that branch from the main river, creating a network of water sources that would sustain large flocks throughout even the driest seasons. As the two men embrace in farewell, their household members begin the process of division. Servants who have worked side by side for years now sort themselves according to their loyalties and obligations. Flocks that have grazed together are carefully separated, with experienced shepherds ensuring that mothers are not parted from their young and that the stronger animals are distributed fairly between the two groups. The sound of bleating sheep and lowing cattle fills the air as the great migration begins. Lot's caravan moves slowly toward the eastern plains, their destination, the well-watered lands near the cities of the valley. Behind them, Abraham's household prepares for a different journey, one that will take them deeper into the hill country where God's promises seem to echo from every stone and ancient tree. The ancient oaks of Mamre stand like gentle guardians in the early morning light, their broad canopies creating pools of soft shadow across the peaceful grove. Abraham has made his camp here among these venerable trees, their thick trunks weathered by countless seasons, their branches reaching toward heaven like outstretched arms in silent prayer. The air carries the sweet scent of wildflowers blooming between the roots, while doves coo softly from their nests high among the leaves. Abraham sits quietly beneath the largest oak, its massive trunk worn smooth by wind and time, feeling the deep peace that settles over this sacred place. As the sun climbs higher, painting the leaves in golden hues, Abraham's eyes grow heavy with the gentle warmth. The whisper of wind through the branches creates a lullaby that seems to speak of ancient promises and quiet hope. His breathing slows as he rests against the sturdy bark, feeling held by something greater than himself. The shadows shift and dance as clouds drift across the sky, and in this tranquil moment, Abraham senses the nearness of the divine. Not in thunder or earthquake, but in the gentle rustle of leaves, the soft call of birds, and the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. The oaks seem to lean closer, their presence both protective and comforting. Here in this grove, time moves differently. The troubles of the world feel distant and small. Abraham's spirit finds rest in the simple beauty of sunlight filtering through leaves, the cool earth beneath him, and the vast sky stretching endlessly above. The ancient trees hold their vigil, witnesses to faith and quiet surrender. The dust settles gently around Abraham's feet as he stands in the valley of Shave, that peaceful place where kings once met in shadow rather than sunlight. The air carries the faint scent of bread, baking somewhere in the distance, mingling with the sweet aroma of wine aging in clay vessels. These are the gifts that await him, though he does not yet know their significance. From the ridge above, a figure approaches with unhurried steps. This is Melchizedek, whose name means righteousness, whose very presence seems to calm the evening wind. He is king of Salem, that ancient city whose name whispers of peace, and he serves as priest of the Most High God. His robes flow like water in the growing dusk, neither rich nor poor, but carrying the dignity of one who has walked long in sacred ways. Melchizedek carries with him bread still warm from the oven, its crust golden like the last rays of sun touching the hills. The wine he brings gleams dark and rich in its vessel, pressed from grapes that ripened under countless summer days. These simple gifts hold depths of meaning that will echo through generations yet unborn. As the two men meet, words flow between them like a gentle stream. Melchizedek speaks blessings over Abraham, his voice carrying the weight of ancient prayers offered before dawn, of vigils kept through silent nights. He blesses Abraham by the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And Abraham receives these words like rain on thirsty ground. The bread breaks easily between them, sharing the harvest of fields that stretch beyond the horizon. The wine passes from one to the other, warm and rich with the taste of the land itself. In this simple meal, something profound unfolds, a moment of recognition between two souls who serve the same eternal God. Abraham offers a tenth of all he has, recognizing in Melchizedek something greater than earthly kingship, the quiet authority of one who stands before the divine presence. The exchange happens without ceremony, as natural as breathing, yet it marks the earth itself with sacred purpose. The stars begin to appear one by one overhead, silent witnesses to this meeting that will ripple through the ages. In the gathering darkness, two figures share the most ancient of human acts, the breaking of bread together, the sharing of wine, the giving of blessing. The ancient road winds gently through the valley of Siddim, where morning mist clings to the olive groves like a soft veil. Abraham's caravan moves slowly, peacefully, the camels' bells creating a gentle rhythm that harmonizes with the whisper of wind through date palms. The recent rescue of Lot weighs quietly on Abraham's heart, not as burden, but as sacred duty fulfilled. Salem appears ahead like a vision of tranquility, its white limestone walls catching the golden light of dawn. This city rests on gentle hills, surrounded by terraced vineyards where workers move with unhurried grace among the vines. The settlement feels different from other places they have passed, carrying an atmosphere of deep reverence and timeless peace. At the city gates, a figure emerges with quiet dignity. Melchizedek, king of Salem, walks toward them with servants bearing bread and wine. His robes flow like water, deep blue embroidered with silver threads that catch the morning light. His face radiates a profound serenity, eyes that seem to hold the wisdom of ages. The king's voice carries the warmth of evening prayers as he speaks his blessing over Abraham. The words flow like honey, calling down favor from the Most High God, creator of heaven and earth. Abraham receives this blessing with bowed head, feeling the sacred weight of divine approval settling gently upon his shoulders. They share bread together under the spreading branches of an ancient oak, the simple meal transformed into something holy by the presence of this priest king. Abraham offers a tenth of all he has recovered, the treasures placed with reverent care before this servant of the Almighty. The blessing lingers long after they part ways, following Abraham's caravan like incense on the evening breeze, a fragrant reminder of divine favor that will echo through generations yet to come. The sun moves toward the western horizon as Abraham stands quietly in the doorway of his tent, watching the gentle activity of his household. Sarah moves gracefully between the cooking fires, her voice soft as she speaks with the servant women about the evening meal. The smell of bread baking in clay ovens mingles with the fragrance of herbs growing in small garden plots they have carefully tended near the well. Lot approaches from the eastern pastures, his own flocks visible in the distance where his shepherds guide them toward water. The two men embrace warmly, their bond strengthened by shared journeys and the countless evenings they have spent planning their routes under star-filled skies. They speak in low tones about the grazing lands they have found, the quality of the grass, and the peaceful relations they have established with the local peoples. As darkness settles over the camp, Abraham walks slowly among the tents, greeting each family, checking on the animals, ensuring that all is well for the night. The camels rest in a large circle, their soft breathing creating a rhythmic sound that blends with the gentle bleating of sheep and goats settling down for sleep. Oil lamps flicker in tent doorways, casting warm golden light on the faces of children listening to bedtime stories told by their mothers. Sarah joins Abraham at the edge of the camp, and together they look up at the vast canopy of stars stretching endlessly above them. The constellations seem closer here in the wilderness, more brilliant and clear than they ever appeared in the city of Haran. Abraham remembers the voice of God speaking to him beneath these same stars. The promise that seemed impossible yet filled him with unshakable hope. The night air carries the sound of distant voices, other nomadic families settled near water sources throughout the valley. It is a peaceful sound, the murmur of human life continuing its ancient rhythms under the watchful presence of the Almighty. Abraham closes his eyes and feels the deep satisfaction of a man who has followed the call placed upon his heart, trusting in promises that reach far beyond what his eyes can see. The evening sky deepens above Abraham's tent, and countless stars begin their ancient dance across the heavens. Each point of light seems to pulse with gentle purpose, as if holding secrets from the very beginning of time. Abraham steps outside, drawn by an invisible invitation to witness this celestial symphony. The desert air carries the faint scent of sage and cooling sand. His weathered hands rest at his sides as he tilts his head upward, feeling small yet strangely significant beneath this vast canopy. The stars seem closer here in the wilderness, more intimate than they ever appeared in the crowded cities of his past. Sarah emerges quietly from the tent, her footsteps soft against the earth. She joins him in this wordless reverence, understanding that some moments require no explanation. Together they stand as witnesses to the eternal rhythm above them, two small figures cradled by the immensity of creation. The brightest star seems to hover just above the horizon, steady and unwavering. Abraham finds his thoughts drifting to the promises he carries in his heart, those divine words that echo still in the quiet chambers of his memory. The star pulses gently, as if acknowledging his faith, as if the very cosmos participates in this sacred covenant. A gentle breeze stirs the desert grasses, creating the softest whisper of sound. In this moment, surrounded by the patient glow of countless suns, Abraham feels the weight of eternity settling softly upon his shoulders. The stars continue their silent vigil, witnesses to promises made and journeys yet to unfold. In their gentle light, time seems to slow, allowing space for wonder and quiet contemplation beneath the endless sky. The sun has set completely now, and Abraham finds himself in that sacred space between waking and sleep. The gentle breeze that cooled the evening air has stilled to barely a whisper, and the last embers of the cooking fire glow softly in the darkness. Sarah has already retired to her tent, her breathing settling into the rhythm of peaceful rest. Abraham sits quietly on a woven mat, his weathered hands folded in his lap, gazing up at the countless stars that pierce the desert sky. Each pinprick of light seems to hold a promise, a reminder of the covenant spoken to him. The night air carries the faint scent of frankincense from earlier prayers, mingling with the earthy smell of the cooling sand. His eyelids grow heavy as he reflects on the day's journey. The steady rhythm of the camel's footsteps still echoes in his memory, a gentle drumbeat that lulled him into contemplation hour after hour. The vast expanse of the promised land stretched before them, endless and full of possibility. As sleep begins to claim him, Abraham feels that familiar sense of divine presence settling over the camp like a soft blanket. It is the same peaceful assurance that has guided each step of their journey, the quiet certainty that they are exactly where they need to be. His breathing deepens and slows, matching the gentle rise and fall of the desert wind. The stars above seem to pulse gently, like a celestial lullaby written across the heavens. Abraham's head tilts back against the soft cushion Sarah prepared for him, and his eyes finally close. In this moment of perfect stillness, surrounded by the infinite quiet of the desert night, he surrenders completely to the deep, restorative sleep that awaits him. The sun has set completely now, and Abraham finds himself in that deep, sacred sleep that comes when God draws near. In this profound slumber, darkness settles around him like a gentle blanket, yet it carries weight and meaning beyond ordinary night. As Abraham sleeps, a thick and dreadful darkness descends upon him. But this is not the darkness of fear or evil. It is the darkness of mystery, the darkness that accompanies the presence of the Almighty when he comes to make covenant with mortal man. In this darkness, Abraham senses something approaching, something that will seal forever the promises spoken earlier. Then, as if from nowhere, a smoking firepot appears in the darkness. Its glow is warm and steady, casting dancing shadows that seem to whisper of ancient promises. The pot moves slowly, deliberately, its smoke rising in gentle spirals toward the heavens. Behind it follows a flaming torch, its light steady and sure, illuminating the path it takes. These are not ordinary flames. They represent the very presence of God himself, moving between the pieces of the sacrifice that Abraham had prepared earlier. The firepot and torch pass between the halves of the heifer, the goat, and the ram. They move with purpose, with solemnity, sealing a covenant that will endure through countless generations. Abraham watches in his vision as the smoking firepot completes its sacred journey. The torch follows, and together they traverse the entire length of the sacrifice. This is how covenants were made in ancient times, with both parties walking between the divided animals. But here, only God passes through. Only the Almighty commits himself to this eternal promise. The smoke rises gently in the still air, carrying with it the weight of divine commitment. Abraham understands, even in his deep sleep, that something momentous has occurred. The God who called him from Ur, who led him to this land, has now bound himself by covenant to fulfill every word he has spoken. The firepot glows softly in the darkness, its warmth reaching across the centuries to touch every heart that trusts in the God of Abraham. The torch burns steady and bright, a light that will never be extinguished, a promise that will never fade. The moon climbs higher above the camp, casting silver light across the quiet tents where Abraham's household rests. In the stillness, something stirs within Abraham's heart, a gentle calling that draws him from his tent into the cool night air. His feet carry him softly across the sandy ground, away from the sleeping camp and toward a small hill that rises like a gentle wave against the starlit sky. Here, in this place of solitude, the Lord's voice comes to him again, tender and filled with promise. The words drift through the darkness like a whisper on the wind, speaking of descendants as numerous as the stars scattered across the vast heavens above. Abraham lifts his weathered face toward the infinite display of light, trying to count what cannot be counted, trying to grasp what seems impossible. His hand rests gently on Sarah's shoulder as she joins him on the hill, her presence a comfort in the quiet mystery of this moment. Together they stand beneath the canopy of stars, two souls touched by a promise that reaches beyond their understanding. The Lord's words echo softly in their hearts, that from them will come a great nation, that their descendants will be blessed and will become a blessing to all the families of the earth. The night wind carries the scent of distant rain and growing things, a reminder that even in this dry land, life finds a way to flourish. Abraham's faith, like a seed planted in good soil, begins to take root in the depths of his being. He cannot see the path ahead, cannot understand how such promises will unfold. But in this sacred moment beneath the stars, trust settles gently in his heart like dew upon the morning grass. The promise hangs in the air like a blessing, soft and certain, as Abraham and Sarah make their way back to the warmth of their tent, carrying with them the echo of words that will shape generations yet to come. Abraham stands upon a hillside overlooking the vast expanse that stretches before him, feeling the gentle warmth of the evening sun upon his weathered face. The Lord's voice comes to him again, clear and tender in the stillness of dusk, speaking of boundaries that will one day define the inheritance of his descendants. From this river to that sea, the divine voice whispers, describing borders that encompass valleys green with grain, hills dotted with olive groves, and cities yet to be built by hands not yet born. Abraham listens with quiet reverence, his heart filled with wonder at the scope of this promise that extends far beyond what his eyes can see. The land breathes beneath his feet, rich earth that has known the footsteps of many peoples, soil that will one day cradle the foundations of a great nation. He can almost hear the future in the evening breeze, the laughter of children playing in courtyards, the songs of harvest festivals, the peaceful murmur of markets where neighbors gather to trade and share news. Rivers flow gently through this promised territory, their waters reflecting the soft light of stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. These streams will water the fields of his descendants, provide drink for their flocks, and carry their boats to distant shores where they will share the blessing that flows through Abraham's lineage. The sea stretches to the horizon, its waves lapping softly against shores that will one day know the touch of fishermen's nets and the laughter of families gathering shells in the sand. This water, too, becomes part of the inheritance, a boundary that speaks of abundance and peaceful prosperity. Abraham closes his eyes and feels the presence of the Almighty surrounding him like a gentle embrace. The promise of land mingles with the promise of descendants, creating a vision of home that transcends the physical boundaries of geography. Here, in this moment of quiet communication with the divine, the future takes shape in Abraham's heart, written not in stone, but in faith itself. The gentle rhythm of daily life continues in Abraham's household, but beneath the surface of routine tasks and familiar conversations, a quiet tension has been growing. Sarai moves through her morning duties with the same graceful efficiency she has always possessed, yet something has shifted in the way she watches the horizon, in the pauses between her words when she speaks with Abraham in the evening shade. Years have passed since they first arrived in this land of promise, and still her arms remain empty of the child that was foretold. The weight of this unfulfilled promise settles over her like morning mist, present but intangible, colouring everything she sees and does. In the women's quarters, there is one who has watched this silent struggle with understanding eyes. Hagar, the Egyptian servant who has been part of their household since those difficult days in Pharaoh's court, moves quietly through her tasks with an awareness that goes beyond mere service. She is skilled in the ways of Egyptian households, familiar with customs and practices that differ from those of Abraham's people. Her hands are steady as she grinds grain, her voice soft as she hums ancient melodies from the land of her birth. There is a dignity in her bearing that speaks of inner strength, of someone who has learned to find peace within whatever circumstances surround her. In the cooling hours of late afternoon, when the work slows and the household settles into quieter rhythms, Hagar often finds herself in conversation with Sarai. Their words flow easily now, after years of shared daily life, covering everything from the practical matters of managing stores and supplies to the deeper questions that arise when two women from different worlds come to understand each other's hearts. The bond between them has grown slowly, naturally, like a tree whose roots spread deep and wide without anyone quite noticing until its shade covers ground that was once bare. In this growing friendship, seeds of change are quietly taking root, preparing to alter the story of Abraham's household in ways that none of them can yet imagine. Deep in the wilderness of Beersheba, where the ancient well reflects starlight like scattered diamonds, a gentle presence moves through the thorny brush. Here, beneath the canopy of desert sky, where silence holds dominion over the land, an angel walks with purpose as soft as morning dew. The spring bubbles quietly, its waters clear and cool, fed by hidden sources deep within the earth. Palm fronds whisper secrets to the night breeze, their leaves rustling with the tender sound of distant rain. This is sacred ground, where heaven touches earth in ways both seen and unseen. The angel approaches the water's edge, robes flowing like liquid moonlight, footsteps making no sound upon the sandy ground. The spring reflects not just starlight now, but something far more radiant. Nearby, a small encampment rests in peaceful slumber. Tents pitched in the ancient way, their fabric worn soft by countless journeys, countless nights beneath these same stars. The embers of cooking fires glow like tiny rubies in the darkness, casting gentle circles of amber light that dance and fade. The angel settles beside the spring, watching over the sleeping camp with eyes that hold the depth of eternity. Here, in this quiet moment between night and dawn, divine plans continue their slow and steady unfolding. The water continues its gentle song. The night breeze carries the scent of desert flowers, and all creation holds its breath in reverent anticipation. In the distance, a night bird calls softly to its mate, the sound carried on wings of wind across the vast expanse. The angel listens, understanding languages that mortals cannot hear, reading messages written in the movement of sand and star. This is the hour of watching, the time of patient preparation for what morning will bring. The spring reflects the angel's presence, its waters now glowing with the faintest hint of celestial light, as if blessed by this divine visitation. Here, beside these ancient waters, heaven prepares to speak once more to those who journey in faith across the endless desert of promise. The years pass quietly in the tents of Abram, and still the promised child does not come. Sarai watches the seasons turn, her heart growing heavier with each passing moon. The covenant remains, the stars still declare their promise, but her womb remains empty. In the gentle way of women who have shared long journeys together, Sarai speaks to her husband of a custom known among their people. Her maidservant Hagar, the Egyptian woman who has served faithfully since their departure from Pharaoh's court, might bear a child in her place. Through this ancient practice, Sarai reasons, the promise might yet be fulfilled. Abram listens to his wife's words with the patience of one who has learned to wait upon the Lord's timing. After much consideration and prayer, he agrees to this arrangement. Hagar, young and strong, becomes his concubine according to the customs of their time. Soon, life stirs within Hagar's womb. The miracle of conception that had eluded Sarai for so many years comes swiftly to the Egyptian maidservant. As the months pass, Hagar's form changes, carrying the child that all had hoped would come to Sarai. But with this blessing comes unexpected sorrow. Hagar, perhaps carried away by the significance of her condition, begins to look upon her mistress with less respect. The natural tensions between the two women grow, creating sadness in the peaceful household. Sarai, her own heart breaking with each day that passes, finds the situation increasingly difficult to bear. The servant she had hoped would solve their childless state has become a source of daily pain. Yet still, the child grows within Hagar, and Abram watches over them both with the careful attention of a shepherd protecting his flock. The child comes in due season, a son strong and healthy. Abram, now 86 years old, holds this baby with wonder and tenderness. Following the custom, he names the boy Ishmael, meaning God hears, for surely the Lord has heard their cry for children. When Abraham has reached 99 years, the Lord appears to him once more in the quietness of his tent. The desert wind carries with it a sense of profound solemnity as God establishes a covenant that will mark his people for all generations to come. In this sacred moment, Abraham's name is confirmed, no longer Abram, but Abraham, father of many nations. The covenant God makes is one of flesh and spirit combined. Every male among Abraham's household, both those born in his house and those bought with money from any foreigner, must be circumcised. This sign in their flesh becomes an everlasting covenant between God and Abraham's descendants. The ritual itself is simple yet profound, a small mark that carries the weight of divine promise. Sarah too receives her new name, no longer Sarai, but Sarah, meaning princess. Though she is 90 years old, God promises that she will bear a son. Abraham falls upon his face and laughs, not in mockery but in wonder at the impossible made possible. A child born to parents nearly 100 years old. Such is the nature of God's miraculous ways. Isaac, God declares, will be the name of this promised son. Through him the covenant will be established as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. Yet God does not forget Ishmael, Abraham's first son through Hagar. He too will be blessed and made fruitful, becoming the father of 12 princes and a great nation. That very day, Abraham takes all the males of his household and circumcises them according to God's command. The covenant is sealed not merely in words, but in obedience, in the willingness to mark their very bodies as belonging to the Lord. In this quiet act of faith, Abraham demonstrates once again his trust in the God who calls him forward into an uncertain but promised future. The gentle breeze stirred through the oaks of Mamre as Sarah moved quietly through her tent, arranging the few precious belongings they had carried from Haran. Her movements were careful and practiced, each gesture speaking of years spent in temporary dwellings, always ready to move at the Lord's calling. Abraham sat in the shade of the great tree, his weathered hands resting on his knees as he gazed across the rolling hills of Canaan. The promise of God echoed in his mind like a distant song, speaking of descendants as numerous as the stars. Yet Sarah's womb remained closed, a reality that had grown heavier with each passing season. The afternoon light filtered through the leaves, casting dancing shadows on the ground where Abraham reflected on the Lord's covenant. His faith remained steady as bedrock, even as human understanding struggled with the passage of time. Sarah was well past the age of bearing children, her monthly cycles long ceased. Yet God's promises were not bound by the limitations of mortal flesh. In the distance, the sound of approaching footsteps broke the stillness. 3 figures emerged from the heat shimmer, walking with purposeful grace toward their encampment. Abraham's eyes lifted, recognizing something profound in their bearing, though he could not yet name what stirred his spirit. Rising with the swift hospitality of his culture, Abraham hurried to meet them, bowing low in greeting. These were no ordinary travelers. There was something in their presence that made the very air seem to hold its breath, as if creation itself recognized the significance of this moment. Sarah watched from the tent entrance as Abraham welcomed the strangers, her heart quickening with an inexplicable sense that their peaceful afternoon was about to be transformed. The visitors accepted Abraham's invitation to rest, their calm acceptance carrying the weight of divine purpose. As Abraham called for water to wash their feet and shade to cool them, the mysterious visitors settled beneath the oak with quiet dignity. Their presence brought a strange peace to the camp, as if heaven itself had descended to dwell among them for this sacred hour. Under the shade of the great oak trees near Mamre, Abraham rests in the heat of the day. The sun climbs high overhead, casting short shadows beneath the ancient branches. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves, creating a soft rustling that speaks of peace and rest. As Abraham sits at the entrance of his tent, he lifts his eyes and sees 3 men standing nearby. Without hesitation, he runs from the tent door to meet them, his heart stirring with the ancient call of hospitality. He bows himself toward the ground, his voice carrying the warmth of genuine welcome. The patriarch speaks with reverence, addressing them as honored guests. His words flow like water over smooth stones, offering rest and refreshment. He speaks of washing their feet, of resting under the tree, of bringing bread to comfort their hearts before they continue their journey. Sarah moves quietly within the tent as Abraham hurries to prepare a feast. He runs to the herd and selects a tender, choice calf, giving it to a young man who hastens to prepare it. The familiar sounds of preparation fill the air, the gentle lowing of cattle, the soft footsteps of servants, the quiet efficiency of hospitality offered with joy. Abraham takes butter and milk, along with the calf that has been dressed, and sets the meal before his guests. He stands by them under the tree as they eat, his presence a testament to the sacred duty of caring for strangers. The scene unfolds with the timeless rhythm of desert hospitality, where every guest is received as a blessing. The conversation flows quietly between Abraham and his visitors, their words carried on the warm afternoon air. There is something profound in this moment, in the shade of ancient trees, in the breaking of bread, in the meeting of heaven and earth disguised as simple human kindness. The heat of the day seems to soften around them, and time itself moves with the gentle pace of eternity touching the temporal world. Here, under Mamre's oaks, the ordinary act of welcoming strangers becomes something sacred, something that will echo through generations yet to come. The heat of midday softens as Abraham finds himself drawn toward a grove of ancient oaks near Hebron. These are the oaks of Mamre, their massive trunks weathered by countless seasons, their branches spreading wide like protective arms over the earth below. The shade they cast is deep and cool, a welcome refuge from the Palestinian sun. Abraham walks slowly among these towering sentinels, his sandaled feet quiet on the carpet of fallen leaves. Each tree seems to hold stories in its rings, whispers of generations who have sought shelter beneath these same branches. The bark is rough beneath his palm as he rests his hand against one particularly ancient trunk, feeling the steady life that pulses within. Sarah moves gracefully through the dappled light, her movements unhurried as she gathers fallen acorns and examines the intricate patterns of leaves. The servants work quietly nearby, setting up their temporary camp with practiced efficiency. Their voices are soft murmurs that blend with the gentle creaking of branches in the afternoon breeze. Here, beneath the oaks, there is a sense of permanence that contrasts beautifully with their nomadic life. These trees have stood for generations, their roots deep in the promised land, their branches reaching toward heaven. Abraham feels a profound connection to this place, as if the very ground beneath his feet pulses with divine promise. The filtered sunlight creates patterns of gold and green that shift and dance across the forest floor. Birds call softly from the canopy above, their songs peaceful and welcoming. A gentle wind stirs the leaves, creating a whispered symphony that seems to speak of rest and renewal. As the day slowly turns toward evening, Abraham knows they will remain here for a time. The oaks of Mamre offer more than shade. They offer a place of communion, a sanctuary where earth and sky meet in perfect harmony. Here, beneath these ancient guardians, the journey continues in stillness and peace. The heat of the day slowly gives way to evening's gentle approach, and Abraham finds himself moved by an urgency he cannot quite name. These visitors, these 3 men who appeared so suddenly by the great trees, deserve more than simple hospitality. They deserve a feast worthy of honored guests. Sarah moves with quiet purpose in their tent, her hands working swiftly but carefully with the finest flour. The dough takes shape under her skilled touch, formed into cakes that will soon fill their dwelling with the warm scent of fresh bread. Abraham watches her work with deep appreciation, knowing that her efforts will create something truly special for their mysterious visitors. Meanwhile, Abraham hurries toward his herd, his eyes scanning for the perfect offering. Among the cattle, one young calf stands apart, tender, healthy, unmarked by any flaw. This one, he decides, will grace their table. He calls to his most trusted servant, a man who has served faithfully for many years, and together they prepare the calf with reverence and care. The preparation becomes a meditation of sorts. Each step, from the careful selection to the patient cooking, feels infused with significance. Abraham senses that this meal represents something far greater than mere sustenance. It is an offering, a bridge between the earthly and the divine, prepared with hearts full of gratitude and wonder. As the cooking fire crackles softly and the aroma begins to fill the air, Abraham gathers butter and milk, the richest and sweetest he can find. Every element of this meal has been chosen with intention, every dish prepared as if for royalty. The evening breeze carries the scent of their feast across the plains, a fragrant promise of the hospitality about to be shared. Soon, everything will be ready. The bread will emerge golden and perfect. The meat will be tender and flavorful, and Abraham will set this bounty before his guests with joy. In this simple act of service, something profound stirs, a sense that heaven itself has drawn near to their humble dwelling place. The years have passed like gentle streams flowing through the promised land, and Sarah's tent remains quiet in the evenings. Abraham walks among his flocks, watching the lambs frolic in the meadows, yet his heart carries the weight of waiting. The promise of descendants as numerous as the stars feels distant under the vast night sky. But God's timing unfolds like morning dew, perfect and unhurried. In the cool of the evening, when the shadows grow long across the valley, the Lord speaks again to his faithful servant. The voice comes like a whisper on the wind, carrying comfort and certainty. Sarah, now well beyond the years of childbearing, sits weaving by the soft glow of oil lamps. Her fingers work the threads with practiced ease, creating patterns that tell stories of their journey. The tent walls billow gently in the night breeze, and somewhere in the distance a nightbird calls its haunting song. The promise comes not with thunder or earthquake, but with the quiet assurance of one who keeps his word. Before the year passes, before the seasons complete their cycle, Sarah will cradle the child of promise in her arms. The son who will carry forward the covenant, whose descendants will inherit this land flowing with milk and honey. Isaac, the name means laughter, for Sarah will laugh with joy when she holds him close, the boy who will grow strong under these same stars, who will walk these same paths his father has wandered. In him, all the promises converge like rivers meeting the sea. The night settles deeper around their camp, and peace descends like a gentle blessing. Abraham rests in the certainty that God's word never fails, that his promises are as sure as the rising sun. In the quiet darkness, hope takes root once more, growing like tender shoots after rain. Tomorrow will bring new mercies, but tonight brings the sweet rest of trust. In the quiet of their tent, Sarah sits beside the small oil lamp, her fingers tracing the worn fabric of her robe. The flickering light casts gentle shadows across her weathered face, each line telling stories of years spent walking beside Abraham through lands both familiar and strange. She remembers the day God first spoke to her husband, how his eyes had filled with such certainty, such hope. "Leave your country, your people, your father's household. Go to the land I will show you." The words had seemed so clear then, so full of divine promise. Yet now, as the seasons turn and turn again, doubt creeps into her heart like morning mist. Her hand moves unconsciously to rest upon her belly, still flat after all these years. The promise of descendants as numerous as the stars feels distant tonight, almost impossible. She is no longer young, no longer the woman who once believed that miracles were simple things, easily grasped by willing hands. Outside, the desert wind whispers through the camp, carrying with it the scent of sage and distant rain. Abraham sleeps peacefully beside her, his breathing steady and sure. Even in sleep, his face holds that same quiet confidence that first drew her to him, that same unwavering trust in the voice that called them from their homeland. Sarah closes her eyes and lets the familiar sounds of night wash over her. Somewhere in the darkness, a nightbird calls softly to its mate. The camels shift and settle in their resting places. The fire crackles low, painting the tent walls with dancing gold. Perhaps faith is not the absence of doubt, she thinks, but the choice to trust despite it. Perhaps God's timing is not her timing, and his ways are deeper than her understanding. In the gentle darkness, surrounded by the quiet rhythm of their nomadic life, Sarah lets herself rest in the mystery of divine purpose. The lamp flickers once, twice, then settles into a steady glow, keeping watch through the peaceful night. The morning sun rises over the Jordan Valley as two figures approach the gates of Sodom. These are the same heavenly messengers who visited Abraham, now appearing as ordinary travelers seeking shelter. The city awakens around them, its streets already bustling with merchants and citizens going about their daily affairs. Lot sits at the city gate, following the custom of men who hold position and influence in the community. When he sees the strangers approaching, something in their bearing causes him to rise immediately. Perhaps it is their quiet dignity or the way the morning light seems to favor their faces. He bows low before them, his voice filled with genuine hospitality. "Please, my lords," he says, "turn aside to your servant's house. Remain for the night, wash your feet, and in the morning you may rise early and continue on your way." But they shake their heads gently, saying they will spend the night in the town square. Lot's insistence grows more urgent, though he speaks softly. There is something in his manner that suggests he knows the dangers that night might bring. Finally, they agree to accept his hospitality, and he leads them through the winding streets to his dwelling. The house fills with the warm scents of bread baking and a simple meal being prepared. Lot's wife and daughters move quietly about their tasks, extending the same gracious welcome their father has shown. For a few peaceful hours, it seems like an ordinary evening of Middle Eastern hospitality. But as darkness settles over the city, voices begin to gather outside. What starts as a few men becomes a crowd, then a mob surrounding Lot's house. Their demands grow louder, their intentions clear and terrible. Lot steps outside, closing the door firmly behind him, and pleads with them to turn away from such wickedness. The crowd presses closer, their voices rising in anger. They accuse Lot of acting as their judge, threatening him with worse treatment than they planned for his guests. In that moment, hands reach out from within the house, pulling Lot back to safety. Suddenly, a strange blindness falls upon those outside, and they stumble about, unable to find even the doorway. The angels moved with quiet urgency through Lot's home, their presence both commanding and gentle. Morning light filtered through the windows as they spoke with measured authority. "You must leave this place immediately," they told him. "Take your wife, your 2 daughters, and go. Do not look back. Do not stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains for your lives." Lot's heart raced as he gathered his family. His wife clutched a few precious belongings while his daughters asked questions he could not answer. The city around them continued its daily rhythm, unaware of what was coming. Merchants called out their wares, children played in the streets, and the morning bustle carried on as it had for countless days before. But something had changed. The very air seemed to hold its breath. The angels took them by the hands, leading them through the familiar streets that now felt foreign and threatening. Each step carried them further from the life they had known. Lot's wife glanced back repeatedly at their home, at the neighbors she had known, at the life they were leaving behind. As they reached the edge of the city, one of the angels spoke again. The words echoed in their minds as they hurried forward, their feet finding the dusty path that led away from Sodom. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows behind them as they walked. The city grew smaller with each step, its walls and towers becoming distant shapes against the morning sky. Still they walked, following the angel's guidance, trusting in a mercy they could barely comprehend. Behind them, the city continued its unknowing dance, while ahead lay an uncertain path towards safety. Behind them, the city of Sodom burns with divine fire, its smoke rising like incense toward heaven. Lot and his daughters move steadily forward, their feet finding purchase on the rocky path that leads away from the valley. The angel's words echo in their minds like a gentle but firm command. Do not look back, do not stop, flee to the mountains. The night air carries the scent of sulfur and smoke, yet ahead of them the mountains promise refuge. Each step takes them further from the judgment that has fallen upon the cities of the plain. The darkness wraps around them like a protective cloak, and the stars above seem to guide their way with soft, steady light. But Lot's wife, walking behind her husband and daughters, feels the pull of all she is leaving behind. Her home, her neighbors, the life she has known for so many years in the fertile valley. The weight of loss grows heavier with each step, and her heart turns back even as her feet carry her forward. The angel's warning fades beneath the stronger call of memory and longing. She slows her pace, allowing the others to move ahead. The glow of the burning cities reflects off the rocky walls around them, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. Unable to resist any longer, she turns her head to look back at the destruction, at the life she can never return to. In that moment of disobedience, of choosing the past over the promise of safety, she becomes a pillar of salt, frozen forever in her backward glance. Lot and his daughters continue their journey, unaware at first that they now number only 3. The mountains draw closer, offering caves and shelter where they can rest and begin again. The morning will bring new challenges, but for now they walk through the gentle darkness, leaving behind the old world and moving toward whatever tomorrow may hold. The evening air holds a weight of anticipation as Abraham stands once more before the Lord. The covenant promises still echo in his heart, yet now a different burden presses upon his spirit. Word has reached him of divine judgment approaching the cities of the plain, and his nephew Lot dwells among them in Sodom. Abraham's weathered hands clasp together as he approaches the Almighty with careful reverence. The desert wind stills around them, as if creation itself pauses to listen. His voice carries the tremor of one who dares to speak with the Creator of all things, yet cannot remain silent when mercy hangs in the balance. "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" Abraham asks, his words measured and respectful. The question emerges from deep wells of concern, not for cities of strangers, but for the innocent who might dwell within those walls. The Lord's presence remains patient, inviting this dialogue between the eternal and the temporal. Abraham continues with growing boldness tempered by humility. "Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place? and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it. The divine response comes with grace that far exceeds human understanding. If 50 righteous souls can be found, the cities will be spared. But Abraham's heart knows the reality of these places, and he presses further with gentle persistence. Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. His acknowledgement of his own frailty makes his intercession all the more remarkable. Step by step, he negotiates downward. 45 righteous souls, then 40, then 30. Each time, divine mercy responds with patience. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns as this extraordinary conversation continues. 20 righteous souls would suffice. Abraham's final plea reaches toward 10, and even this small number receives the promise of deliverance. In this moment, we witness the mystery of prayer itself, where mortal concern meets infinite compassion, where one man's love for his family becomes a bridge between earth and heaven. The promised child arrives at last, filling Abraham and Sarah's tent with gentle laughter that echoes across the desert camp. Isaac, whose name means laughter, brings joy that spreads like morning light over the wells and olive groves of their dwelling place. Sarah, now advanced in years, holds her son with wonder that never fades. The child she thought impossible has become the center of their peaceful world. Abraham watches his wife cradle their boy, remembering the divine promise spoken beneath desert stars so many seasons ago. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the camp rests in stillness, Abraham often rises to watch Isaac sleep. The child's gentle breathing reminds him of wind through barley fields, soft and rhythmic. Each peaceful moment confirms that the Almighty's word has taken flesh and dwells among them. The servants move quietly about their morning tasks, mindful of the sleeping child. They speak in hushed tones near the tent where Sarah nurses Isaac, understanding that something sacred has entered their community. The promised seed of nations rests in swaddling clothes, unaware of the covenant he carries. Isaac grows strong under the desert sun, his laughter joining the sounds of bleating sheep and rustling date palms. Abraham teaches him to walk among the flocks, showing him how to gentle the lambs with patient hands. The child learns the rhythms of nomadic life, the movement of seasons, the reading of stars. In the evening hours, when shadows lengthen and the air grows cool, Abraham holds Isaac close and tells him stories of the one true God. The child listens with wide eyes, not yet understanding the weight of promises, only knowing the warmth of his father's voice and the security of being chosen. Sarah watches from the tent opening, her heart full of gratitude for this gift that seemed impossible. The child of promise sleeps peacefully in Abraham's arms, carried by the gentle currents of faith toward a future bright with divine purpose. The morning light filters through the tent opening where Sarah sits, her weathered hands folded gently in her lap. The years have carved lines of patient waiting across her face, yet today something different stirs within her heart. A quiet recognition, as if the very air itself carries whispers of promise fulfilled. Abraham moves slowly about their dwelling, his movements careful with the weight of years. The flocks graze peacefully beyond their tent, their soft bleating a familiar rhythm that has accompanied them through countless seasons of wandering. Yet this morning feels touched by something eternal, something that makes even the ordinary seem sacred. Sarah's fingers trace the fabric of her robe as she recalls the visitors from Mamre, their words echoing like distant thunder across the landscape of her memory. The thought had seemed impossible then, had drawn laughter from her lips hidden behind the tent flap. But now, as months have passed, her body tells a different story. Her hand moves instinctively to rest upon her belly, feeling the subtle changes that mark the beginning of miracle. The God who called Abraham from Ur, who led them through unknown territories and sealed promises with fire and smoke, is writing a new chapter in the story of their lives. Abraham approaches with gentle steps, his eyes holding that same wondering recognition. No words pass between them in this moment, only the shared understanding that they stand at the threshold of something beyond their comprehension. The promise spoken beneath ancient oaks is taking flesh, taking form within Sarah's aging frame. A soft breeze stirs the tent walls, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and the distant sound of running water. The land around them seems to pulse with quiet anticipation, as if creation itself holds its breath for the fulfillment of divine words spoken in starlight and sealed in covenant. Sarah closes her eyes, allowing herself to rest in this gentle knowing, this sacred stirring that speaks of laughter yet to come. The morning light filters through the tent walls as Sarah moves with quiet purpose, her hands working steadily as she prepares for something special. Today marks a celebration that has been building in her heart for months. Isaac has grown strong and healthy, no longer dependent on her milk, and the time has come for his weaning feast. Abraham watches from the doorway as his wife arranges small clay bowls filled with honey cakes and dried fruits. Her movements carry the gentle efficiency of a woman who has waited decades for this moment. The child she thought would never come now toddles between the tent poles, his laughter mixing with the soft bleating of goats in the distance. The servants begin arriving as the sun climbs higher, their arms laden with fresh bread and pitchers of goat's milk. Hagar appears at the edge of the gathering, Ishmael at her side. The older boy watches the preparations with curious eyes, not yet understanding the significance of what unfolds before him. Sarah lifts Isaac into her arms, feeling the solid weight of his growing body. His dark eyes mirror Abraham's, filled with the same quiet intensity that has carried them through their long journey. She whispers a prayer of thanksgiving, remembering the impossible promise that became this precious reality. The feast begins simply, with Abraham offering a blessing over the food. His voice carries across the assembled group, speaking words of gratitude for God's faithfulness. The bread is broken and shared, the honey cakes passed from hand to hand. Isaac sits between his parents, his small fingers exploring the textures of dates and almonds. As the afternoon settles into evening, the celebration takes on a peaceful rhythm. Stories are shared, quiet laughter ripples through the group, and the child at the center of it all plays contentedly in the dust at his mother's feet. This weaning feast marks not just Isaac's growth, but the fulfillment of promises that once seemed impossible. The morning light filters softly through the tent walls, as Sarah watches quietly from the entrance. Yesterday's celebration of Isaac's weaning has settled into something heavier, a decision that has been weighing on her heart. She sees Hagar moving about her daily tasks, and young Ishmael playing nearby, his laughter carrying on the gentle breeze. Abraham sits in contemplation, his weathered hands folded as he considers the words Sarah spoke to him in the quiet hours before dawn. "Send away the bondwoman and her son," she had said, "for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son Isaac." The weight of these words presses upon his spirit like stones. This is not a decision made lightly or in anger, but one born from the complexity of promises and the unfolding of God's plan. Abraham's heart is heavy, for Ishmael is his son, born of his own flesh, and he has watched the boy grow from infant to young man with pride and affection. As the sun climbs higher, Abraham rises and walks slowly toward Hagar's dwelling. His steps are measured, each one carrying the weight of necessity and sorrow intertwined. The camp continues its quiet morning rhythms around them, servants tending to their duties, animals grazing peacefully in the nearby pastures. Hagar looks up as Abraham approaches, and something in his expression tells her that this moment will change everything. There is kindness in his eyes, but also resolve. The desert wind stirs gently around them, carrying with it the scent of wild herbs and the distant promise of journeys yet to come. Abraham speaks quietly to her of provisions, of blessing, of the path that lies ahead. His voice is gentle but firm, like a father preparing his household for what must be. Young Ishmael continues playing, unaware that his childhood in this place is drawing to its close. The morning continues its peaceful progression, holding within it both ending and beginning, both sorrow and hope, as God's larger story unfolds across the generations like morning light spreading across the ancient landscape. In the vast expanse of the Negev, where the earth stretches endlessly under heaven's dome, Hagar walks with measured steps across the sandy ground. Her son Ishmael moves beside her, his young feet finding their rhythm in this wilderness that has become their teacher. The morning sun casts long shadows behind them as they journey toward a distant grove of acacia trees. The water in their goatskin grows lighter with each passing hour, yet there is no urgency in their movement. This is the rhythm of desert life, where each step is taken with purpose and every breath is a quiet prayer. Hagar's eyes scan the horizon, not with worry, but with the practiced gaze of one who has learned to read the subtle signs of this ancient land. Near a cluster of weathered stones, she notices a small depression in the earth where the sand appears darker, more compacted. Her fingers trace the edge of this natural basin, feeling the cool dampness that speaks of water beneath. With gentle persistence, she begins to clear away the loose sand, her movements as patient as the desert itself. Ishmael watches as his mother works, understanding without words the sacred nature of this moment. The earth yields slowly, revealing first a trickle, then a steady seepage of clear water. This is how springs are born in the wilderness, not with grand announcements but with quiet persistence and watchful eyes. As the water gathers in the small basin, Hagar cups her hands and drinks deeply, then helps her son do the same. The water tastes of stone and sky, of deep earth and patient time. Around them, the desert continues its eternal dance of sun and shadow, while this small well offers its gift to those who seek with humble hearts. The acacia trees nearby seem to lean slightly toward this new source of life, their roots already sensing the promise of sustained nourishment. In this moment, the wilderness reveals itself not as a place of harsh trial, but as a teacher of trust, showing that provision often comes to those who watch and wait with faithful hearts. The wells of Beersheba shimmer quietly in the morning light, their waters reflecting the peaceful sky above. Abraham stands beside the tamarisk tree he planted, its branches swaying gently in the desert breeze. The shade it provides speaks of permanence, of roots growing deep into this promised land. In the distance, a small procession approaches across the sandy terrain. King Abimelech of Gerar comes forward with measured steps, accompanied by Phicol, the commander of his army. Their faces carry the weight of important words, yet their manner remains respectful and calm. Abraham watches their approach with quiet dignity. The years have taught him patience, the wisdom that comes from walking with the Almighty through countless seasons of testing and blessing. His beard, now touched with silver, catches the gentle morning light. Abimelech draws near, his voice carrying clearly across the still air. The king speaks of what he has observed, how God's blessing rests visibly upon Abraham in all his endeavors. Every venture prospers, every decision bears fruit, every step forward opens new paths of abundance. The request that follows flows like water seeking its course. Abimelech desires a covenant, a binding agreement that will ensure peace between their peoples for generations to come. He asks Abraham to swear that kindness will continue between them, just as the king has shown kindness to the wandering patriarch. Abraham's response comes with the warmth of genuine friendship. He agrees readily to this covenant of peace, understanding that such agreements create stability in a world that often shifts like desert sands. Yet there is one matter that requires attention first. The wells that Abraham's servants have dug, those life-giving sources of water so precious in this dry land, have been seized by Abimelech's servants. Abraham speaks of this not with anger, but with the quiet firmness of one who knows his rights and speaks truth with gentle authority. Abimelech listens with apparent surprise, claiming no knowledge of this taking. His response carries the ring of sincerity, and Abraham accepts these words with the grace of one who chooses to believe the best in others. These will serve as witness, a living testimony that the wells of Beersheba belonged to him by right of his labor and God's blessing. Abraham felt the morning sun warm against his weathered hands as he knelt beside the carefully arranged stones. The altar stood simple yet profound against the stark beauty of Mount Moriah, each stone placed with trembling reverence. Isaac moved quietly nearby, gathering the final pieces of wood, his young voice carrying softly on the mountain breeze. The journey up the mountain had been filled with gentle conversation, father and son walking the ancient paths together. Isaac's questions had been innocent, wondering about the lamb for the offering, his trust in his father complete and unwavering. Abraham's responses had come quietly, his voice steady, despite the weight pressing upon his heart. Now, as the moment drew near, Abraham's hands moved with practiced precision, arranging the wood upon the altar. Each piece was placed with care, the dry branches catching the morning light. The silence between father and son held a sacred quality, broken only by the whisper of wind through the sparse mountain vegetation. Isaac continued to help, his movements graceful and unhurried. There was something peaceful in his demeanor, a quiet acceptance that seemed to flow from deep within. As he worked, he would glance at his father with eyes full of love and complete trust, never questioning the purpose of their journey. Abraham paused in his work, his gaze drifting across the distant horizon where the land of promise stretched endlessly. The same land that had been shown to him in visions, the same earth that would one day be filled with his descendants. The promise felt both infinitely distant and intimately close as he stood in this moment of ultimate testing. The altar was nearly complete now, the wood arranged perfectly, the stone solid and sure beneath. Abraham's breathing remained steady and deep, each breath a prayer, each moment a step deeper into trust. The mountain held them both in its ancient embrace, witness to this quiet drama of faith unfolding in the gentle morning light. The morning sun rises gently over the hills of Beersheba, casting long shadows across the quiet encampment where Abraham has made his home. The air is still and cool, carrying the faint scent of desert wildflowers that bloom briefly after the seasonal rains. Abraham sits quietly outside his tent, his weathered hands folded in his lap, his eyes fixed on the distant mountains that rise like sleeping giants against the pale dawn sky. Isaac moves about the camp with the easy confidence of youth, gathering the supplies his father has requested: wood for the offering, rope, flint for the fire. His movements are unhurried, peaceful, as he prepares for what he believes will be another journey of worship with his father. The young man has grown tall and strong, his face bearing the gentle wisdom that comes from years spent learning at Abraham's side. Two servants help load the donkey with careful attention, their voices low and respectful in the morning stillness. They speak in soft tones about the path ahead, the 3 days of travel that will take them through familiar valleys and across well-worn routes that countless pilgrims have followed before them. Abraham rises slowly, his movements deliberate and measured. There is a profound quietness about him this morning, a sense of deep contemplation that seems to settle like a mantle around his shoulders. He looks once more toward the distant peak of Moriah, where the ancient stories say heaven touches earth, where the sacred and the earthly meet in perfect harmony. The small procession begins to move, their footsteps soft against the packed earth. The donkey's hooves create a gentle rhythm, steady and soothing as they leave the familiar comforts of home behind. Abraham walks beside Isaac, their shadows stretching long across the desert floor as they begin their journey toward the mountain that waits in the distance. The path ahead curves gently through rolling hills dotted with olive trees and patches of green grass. Birds call softly from hidden perches, their songs creating a peaceful soundtrack for the beginning of this sacred pilgrimage. The air grows warmer as the sun climbs higher but remains gentle and welcoming. The morning light filters gently through Abraham's tent as he rises with a weight upon his heart that feels heavier than the desert stones. God's voice still echoes in his mind from the night before, asking something that seems impossible to understand. Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. There offer him as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Abraham's weathered hands tremble slightly as he prepares for the journey. Isaac, now a young man, helps his father gather wood for the offering, unaware of the profound test that lies ahead. The servants load the donkey with supplies as the family prepares to travel toward the distant mountains that rise like gentle giants against the morning sky. The path winds through familiar valleys where Abraham once walked with God, where promises were made under starlit skies. Each step feels both heavy and sacred, as if the very ground understands the weight of what is unfolding. Isaac walks beside his father, his young voice carrying easily on the desert breeze as they talk of simple things. On the third day, Abraham lifts his eyes and sees the place in the distance. The mountain rises before them like a quiet altar, its slopes bathed in the soft light of early morning. Abraham's heart pounds with a mixture of faith and anguish as he tells his servants to wait while he and Isaac go ahead to worship. The wood is placed upon Isaac's shoulders, while Abraham carries the fire and the knife. Together, father and son begin their ascent up the mountain path. The silence between them grows deeper, with each step filled with love and trust and the mysterious workings of divine purpose. Isaac's voice breaks the quiet reverie. "Father," he says softly, "the fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham's reply comes from the depths of his faith. "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And they walk on together, their footsteps echoing softly against the mountain stone. Abraham lifts his eyes, and there, caught in a thicket by its horns, stands a ram. The morning light filters through the branches, illuminating this unexpected gift from the Almighty. The animal waits quietly among the thorns, as if it has been prepared for this very moment. With reverent hands, Abraham approaches the ram. His heart overflows with gratitude as he understands the profound mercy that has been shown. The Lord has provided a substitute, a way of redemption that preserves life while honoring the sacred covenant between them. Isaac watches in wonder as his father gently frees the ram from the thicket. The thorns release their hold, and the animal stands calm and ready. There is something deeply peaceful about this moment, as if all of creation participates in this holy exchange. Abraham prepares the altar once more, but now with joy rather than anguish. The ram becomes the offering, ascending as sweet incense before the Lord. The smoke rises straight and steady in the still morning air, carrying with it the gratitude of a father whose son has been restored to him. As the sacrifice is completed, Abraham names this place Jehovah-Jireh, meaning the Lord will provide. The words echo softly across the mountaintop, a declaration of faith that will resonate through generations yet to come. Father and son stand together on Mount Moriah, bound now not only by blood, but by shared witness to divine provision. The Lord has seen their faithfulness and has opened a way where there seemed to be none. The sun climbs higher, warming the rocks and filling the spaces between the olive trees with golden light. All is peaceful here. All is well. The God of Abraham has proven himself faithful once again, providing exactly what is needed at exactly the right moment. Abraham and Isaac gather their things slowly, reluctant to leave this sacred place. The memory of this morning will remain with them always, a testament to the God who provides for those who trust in him completely. The morning sun cast long shadows across the camp as Abraham's household stirred to life. The tents, still heavy with dew, reflected the golden light that filtered through the ancient oaks of Mamre. Sarah emerged from her dwelling, her movements graceful despite the weight of years and the burden of barrenness that had settled upon her heart like a quiet, persistent ache. In the distance, the sound of bleating sheep and lowing cattle reminded all who dwelt there of the Lord's abundant provision. Abraham's servants moved among the animals with practiced ease, their faces bearing the contentment of those who served a righteous master. Lot's portion of the flocks grazed on the eastern slopes, where the grass grew thick and green. The young man had chosen well when he selected the plain of Jordan, though Abraham had sensed something troubling in the air that drifted from the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Still, he trusted in the Lord's sovereignty over all things, knowing that even in separation, his nephew remained under heaven's watchful eye. As the day progressed, Abraham found himself drawn to the altar he had built beneath the great trees. The stones, weathered by wind and washed by rain, stood as silent witnesses to countless prayers offered in faith. Here, in this sacred space, the promises of God felt as tangible as the warm earth beneath his feet. The Lord had spoken of descendants as numerous as the stars, of a land flowing with milk and honey, of blessings that would extend to all nations. Though his body was aging and Sarah's womb remained closed, Abraham held fast to these promises with the quiet certainty of one who had heard the voice of the Almighty. Evening approached with its familiar rhythm of rest and reflection. The cooking fires began to glow, their smoke rising like incense toward the darkening sky. Children played between the tents while their mothers prepared the evening meal, their laughter a sweet melody that spoke of hope and continuity. Sarah sat by her tent, her hands busy with fine linen, her heart wrestling with questions too deep for words. Yet even in her questioning, there remained a thread of faith, delicate but unbroken, connecting her to the promise that seemed to tarry. The familiar landscape of Beersheba spreads before Abraham as he makes his way back to this place of covenant and remembrance. The well he had dug here still yields its clear, cool water, and the tamarisk tree he planted has grown fuller, its branches offering welcome shade against the desert sun. This is sacred ground, where oaths were sworn and peace was established with Abimelech, king of the Philistines. Abraham's servants move quietly about the camp, their tasks performed with the efficiency born of countless journeys. They know this place well, having returned here many times over the years. The tents are pitched in their customary arrangement, creating a sense of home even in the wilderness. The flocks spread out across the familiar pastures, their gentle bleating, a comfortable sound that speaks of provision and blessing. How many seasons have passed since he first called upon the name of the Lord in this place? Each ring of growth in this tree marks another year of God's faithfulness, another cycle of provision and protection. The roots have grown deep, drawing sustenance from the hidden waters below, just as his own faith has been nourished by the unseen hand of the Almighty. As evening approaches, Abraham settles beneath the spreading branches. The desert air grows cool, carrying the scent of sage and the distant murmur of his household preparing for rest. Here at Beersheba, surrounded by the evidence of God's provision, he finds peace in the rhythm of another day's close. The stars begin to emerge overhead, those same celestial lights that once carried divine promises of generations yet to come. The years flow like gentle streams through the landscape of memory as Abraham's story continues to unfold across the generations. His legacy spreads like morning dew across the hills of Canaan, touching each descendant with the promise that was first whispered beneath those ancient stars. Isaac walks the same paths his father once traveled, his footsteps finding the worn stones where Abraham had paused to build altars. The wells that Abraham had dug still provide cool water for Isaac's flocks, and the covenant blessing flows through him like a quiet river continuing its course toward the sea. Jacob, grandson of Abraham, inherits not just the promise but the wrestling nature of faith itself. Under the same vast sky where Abraham once counted stars, Jacob learns to trust in the God who spoke to his grandfather. The promise deepens and widens, growing from a single man's calling into a family's destiny. As time passes like gentle winds across the hills, Abraham's descendants multiply as promised. They become as numerous as the stars. Abraham gazed upon during those long, peaceful nights when God's voice was clearest. Each generation carries forward the memory of that first great calling, that moment when everything changed, because one man said yes to the voice of the Almighty. The land itself seems to remember Abraham's presence. The oak trees where he pitched his tent in Mamre continue to spread their branches in welcome shade. The stones he gathered for altars remain as silent witnesses to his faith. The hills and valleys hold the echo of his prayers, his quiet conversations with the God who called him friend. In the settling dusk of years, Abraham's obedience becomes the foundation upon which nations are built. His willingness to leave the familiar and embrace the unknown creates pathways for blessing that stretch far beyond what he could have imagined during those first uncertain steps from Haran. The stars continue their ancient dance overhead, each one a reminder of promises kept and covenants honored. Abraham's legacy lives on in every act of faith, every moment of trust, every quiet yes spoken to the voice of God calling us towards something greater than ourselves.